Pornography, Intrinsically Evil by Matt Fradd. That's me. Here's what we got to cover. What pornography is, what it means to say an act is intrinsically evil, and 3, whether pornography is intrinsically evil and why. Now, we could devote hours to each of these, or at least the number 2 and 3, but we don't have time for that, and so this is going to be a brief overview of each of these points. So let's begin. What is pornography? The term pornography entered the English language in the mid-19th century, literally meaning the writing or engravings of or about prostitutes. That's what it means etymologically, In some sense, pornography is therefore an extension of prostitution. The producers of pornography intend the consumer to interact with the material the way one interacts with a prostitute. It's a product that serves an erotic function. Pornography, therefore, consists of visual materials containing explicit displays of sexual organs or sexual activities, whether real or simulated, in order to rouse erotic rather than aesthetic sensations. More briefly, we could just say that pornography is material that depicts erotic behavior intended to cause sexual arousal. So, let's step back a bit and ask the question, what makes an act intrinsically evil? The object, the intention, and the circumstances make up the sources or constitutive elements of the morality of human acts. All 3 sources must be good for the act to be good. In these 3 diagrams, the color red represents evil. Each of these acts that are red are evil, but only when the object of the act is evil do we say that the act is intrinsically evil. So what's the difference? Well, when we say an act is intrinsically evil, we mean that it's wrong in and of itself. That is, it's not wrong due to something extrinsic, the intention or circumstance, but just because of what it is. And therefore, nothing outside it, the object, can make it good, or even neutral. So let's look at 3 examples, beginning with an evil intention. Suppose a man prays in public with the sole intention of appearing holy to those around him. In this case, since his intention is evil, right, it's prideful or it's vain or both, the act is evil, even though the object, praying, is good, and the circumstances are good. Let's say the circumstances were such that it inspired others to also pray. Nevertheless, the act is evil. Evil circumstances. A man makes love to his wife. That's a good thing. He has loving intentions. He doesn't do so out of lust. And yet he does so when it's medically dangerous. In this case, though the object and intention are good, the consequences into which the act is committed or inserted make it evil. Now keep in mind, we're not speaking of the culpability of the subject. We're just talking about the act itself. Also, we should point out, when we say evil, what is it that we mean? We mean that there is a lack of something that ought to be there. That's what we mean, to sum it up. Thirdly, let's think of a situation in which there is an evil object. A man kills an innocent person. In this case, whether or not his intention was good, right? He thought it was an intruder trying to harm his family. And of course, depending on how much aggression he thought the intruder was showing, would determine whether or not he was justified in using that amount of force, but that's a different discussion. Or whether or not the consequences somehow brought about more good than harm. Since the object is evil, the act is intrinsically evil. So, is pornography intrinsically evil? When it comes to pornography, this is an important discussion to have since, and just in case you're wondering why on earth this matters, here's why. If pornography is only wrong because of the intention or circumstances, then theoretically, if those things could be altered to be good, pornography could potentially be a good act. So what are some reasons that people give for thinking that pornography is wrong? If pornography is only wrong because it can be addictive, that's a consequence, then the solution should be to help people regulate their porn use like we do with alcohol consumption. If pornography is only wrong because children are not cognitively developed enough to process the images that they accidentally stumble upon, then let's help see to it that children aren't exposed to pornography. Now, this may not be possible, but the point is, if it were, then it would follow that pornography is morally good, or at least neutral. But I don't think us, or me, Christians, would want to say that's true, and even non-Christians. I think many people who aren't religious have the sense that it's just wrong in and of itself. Some other reasons people give for thinking that porn is wrong. It often glamorizes violence. It can lead to sexual violence and even rape. It can cause erectile dysfunction. It can lead to marital breakdown and divorce. It's unlike real-life sex and therefore gives people a false impression of what real sex is like. It propagates racial stereotypes. Now, I want to point out, pointing to the negative consequences of an action is not a bad thing. It's a very, very good thing. People have a right to know that pornography can have these negative sorts of effects. In fact, I've just completed a book with Ignatius Press that will be coming out early 2017, which is a secular response to pornography. And in this, I argue for why I think pornography is intrinsically evil, but then I also address all of these issues that you see here. We need to address them. But again, notice, all of these things on the screen right here don't have to do with the object, they have to do with the consequences. Now again, if the only thing wrong with pornography is its consequences, we could theoretically alter those consequences, or if they somehow changed, we could then therefore say pornography is okay. But it's not. So, why is pornography intrinsically wrong? I think Karol Wojtyła, who later on became St. John Paul II, got it right when he wrote in Love and Responsibility that the human person is a good toward which the only proper and adequate attitude is love. I have to read that again, even though it's right there in front of you. The human person is a good towards which the only proper and adequate attitude is love. Now, this is either true or it's not, but I suspect that the vast majority of people think that it is true. And when people hold to this belief, they don't usually think that they're committing the error of speciesism, which is an unjustified bias in favor of one's own species. So, for the sake of argument, let's just assume that it is true, since delving into the ontological rationale behind this assertion, this statement, would take us far afield. So, we ought to ask the question then, what is love? If the only proper attitude that we should hold towards a human person is love, what on earth is love? The human person is a good towards which the only proper attitude is love. I think that's pretty beautiful. But I talk about loving my children, and I talk about loving nachos. I say I love my wife, I love Netflix, I love Jesus, I love surfing. What is it that we mean? Drawing from St. Thomas Aquinas, Wojtyła understands love as willing the good of the other. So, if I will the other as a good, which is a fine thing, but if I do that without willing the good of the other, this is not love. Our friends at Fight the New Drug get it right when they say porn kills love. All pornography is intrinsically evil, therefore, since it glamorizes, incites, and is itself documented evidence of the contrary to love, namely use, which, since it is contrary to love, is always an inappropriate disposition to hold towards another person. Whereas love wills the good of the other for the sake of the other, when we use a person, we treat the other merely as a means to an end. And in the case of pornography, a selfish one that involves the perversion of the sexual faculty. That's a whole other area we haven't even begun to address, but if we did, we would see why that in and of itself would show that the act is intrinsically evil. Whereas love enables us to see the worth of the other, pornography reduces the mystery of the other to a collection of body parts to be, as it were, consumed, instead of helping us to see the other as a person for who he is. Wonderfully made, deserving of reverence. I'd like to conclude with a quotation from Anthony Eslin, professor of English at Providence College. He says, "The human body is a precious thing, worthy of our reverence. It's not a tool, not an object of consumption like a steak or a keg of beer, not an animate provider of pleasure. It's the outward expression of a profound mystery, that of another human being. When we meet another human person, when we look at his or her face, we are in the presence of a creature whose like we have never found in all the rest of the universe. The human person is open to infinity. He can do more than apprehend the things he observes. He can imagine worlds he has never seen. Honor and reverence is due to the astounding mystery of the human person. It's a contradiction to say I honor the human person while treating the human body as separable from the person, using it as a tool, devouring pornographic images of it. One cannot at once love the beautiful and desire to defile it. One cannot love the Pieta with an axe.